Hello everybody, this is Sean, spelled the correct way. That's right, we bully anyone around here who spells it with an H or a W. Get that crap out of here. And you clicked on this video today because you wanted to know the top postseasons of all time. Well, that's not what's going to be happening, because unfortunately for you, I did not start watching baseball until 2010, when I was a wee lad, just a 6th grader, trying to remember all the city-states in ancient Greece, worried about how many trash cans I'd get thrown into in middle school. So, this list is only going to consist of postseasons that I actually watched and experienced myself. Here are my criteria for the list. 1. How memorable was the postseason as a whole? There needs to be multiple series from the start to the end that I still remember to this day. 2. How many entertaining series or moments were there? If there are multiple series or moments that people still talk about to this day, it's going to be on this list. And number 3, the least important of my criteria, was the World Series winner satisfying? This is not the end-all be-all for me, but you definitely get some extra point if I personally enjoyed the winner. Without further ado, this is Sean, and these are my top 5 best MLB Postseasons. At number 5, I have the 2017 postseason, and I feel like this could be a controversial one for 2 different reasons. The first one being, people might rate this higher because of how good the World Series was. And on the other hand, people might think this is one of the worst because of who won it. But I think 5 is a great spot for it. Let me tell you why. Both wildcard games had some great drama. Twins put up a 3 spot on the Yankees in the first inning. I remember calling my buddy, who's a Twins fan, shout out to Henry. And I was like, dude, you guys are going to the World Series. And then by the end of the first, it was tied. But still, they put up a good fight. And then we had the National League wildcard game where the Diamondbacks beat the Rockies 11-8. Rockies almost came back at the end. A relief pitcher, Archie Bradley, hit a triple. I still think about that moment to this day. A stand-up triple. I am personally in favor of the DH, but that moment was awesome. And then that was just the wild card. We had the Yankees versus the Indians. Indians won the first 2 games. Game 2 went to extra innings and features Francisco Lindor hitting a home run that I still associate with him to this day. That is the number 1 play I think of when I think of Francisco Lindor. But it wasn't enough. The Yankees crushed everyone's hearts. They reverse swept the Indians. And we also got one of the best ALCSs, honestly, that I can ever remember. Between the Yankees and the Astros, it went 7 games. There was that controversial play at the plate where Gary Sanchez forgot how to play defense like he usually did on the Yankees. But this series was great. The home team won every game. The crowds were electric. But that was just the appetizer for the 2017 World Series. Dodgers versus Astros. The Dodgers haven't won it in forever. The Astros had never won it, and the Astros were a huge underdog in the eyes of the people at the time. They were homegrown, very likable. Can you believe that? Yep, they were actually likable back then. And this series just ruled. 5 out of the 7 games were within 2 runs. 2 of the games went extra innings. That Game 5, 12-13 final score is one of the greatest World Series games of all time. This one even saw a little controversy, with Yuli Gurriel making a racially insensitive gesture towards Yu Darvish. Come on, man. But don't worry, Rob Manfred, great commissioner, he punished Gurriel and suspended him 5 games to start the 2018 baseball season because it wasn't that bad where he had to miss the World Series. But okay, Manfred. The Astros ended up winning this one, and a lot of you are probably yelling at your screen, why hasn't he mentioned it yet? Well, I'm going to mention it right now. The Astros cheated during 2017. They were banging on the trash can when it was going to be a curveball. They were not banging on the trash can when it was going to be a fastball. The hitters knew what was coming, and many people want this title to be stripped. Well, whatever happened with that is one thing, but that does not take away from what a great postseason this was. And as a Giants fan, it was great to see the Dodgers lose. As a baseball fan, it was great to see the Yankees lose. This was a good one. You should go watch those World Series highlights if you haven't seen them yet. On to number 4. At number 4, I have the 2019 postseason, and I don't know if this is an underrated one or not, but I remember this one so fondly. And this might be why. For the wild card game that started this postseason out, I was there. I was on Mount Davis. I've never sat up there before, and I got to sit up there for what could probably be the Oakland A's final playoff game. And if I get to tell my grandkids that I was up there on Mount Davis, Maybe I couldn't see center field. Maybe the A's got blown out, but I was up there with those 100,000 rowdy fans who proved that night that there are Oakland A's fans who want to go, despite what that dummy Dave Kaval or John Fisher or Rob Manfred want to tell you. And then, in the National League wildcard game, we had one of my least favorite players, Trent Grisham, got his first taste of the spotlight when he made a horrible error to blow the game for the Brewers. And this was just the start of Juan Soto's breakout postseason. If you didn't know who he was before this year, you definitely did after, and I loved it. And funnily enough, Josh Hader, Trent Grisham, and Juan Soto all played together for a bit last year in San Diego. How weird is that? Then in the NLDS, Dodgers versus the Nationals, and not any Dodgers, the 106-win Dodgers, the overwhelming favorite to win the World Series coming out of the National League, got beat in 5 games by the Nationals. Juan Soto and Anthony Rendon went back-to-back to tie the game in Game 5, and Howie Kendrick hit a grand slam in the top of the 10th. Clayton Kershaw choked again. The Nationals finally won a playoff series. It was awesome. Braves and Cardinals also went 5 games, and everyone was super psyched for Game 5. I remember going to see Joker. How edgy of me, I know. And we were all excited to watch the game. After we saw the movie, we were going to go to Buffalo Wild Wings. Checked my phone, saw it was only the 2nd inning. I said, hey, let's go. Then I looked at the score. It was 11-0 in the 2nd inning. The Braves laid down and died in one of the most embarrassing blowouts I can remember in the playoffs. Astros and Yankees faced off again in the ALCS, and Jose Altuve hit a walk-off home run to send the Astros to the World Series. The smiling Chapman meme. That's from this postseason. All of that happened, and I haven't even talked about the World Series yet. It went 7 games, and it was the first championship series ever in North American sports where nobody won a home game. Every single road team won, and the Nationals won their first ever World Series. They were a huge underdog coming into the postseason. I don't think they were favored in any of the series they played in, maybe the one against the Cardinals, but that would be the only one. There were big moments. There were controversies, like runner's interference that shouldn't have been a runner's interference. Nationals' backs were up against the wall, and Steven Strasburg literally puts his career on the line, empties the tank of what his body has. He's literally falling apart after this start, and he gave them the start they needed to survive to Game 7. All throughout this World Series, Juan Soto was hitting home runs, having swagger, doing the Soto shuffle. This is where it became really popular, was during this World Series. And he let everybody know that he was not scared of the spotlight. And then Howie Kendrick puts a dent in the foul pole to win it. 2019 was the last great postseason, and I have no doubt about that. I really hope that we get another good one soon. But that's just my number 4. At number 3, I have the 2010 postseason, and I look at this one with rose-tinted glasses 100%. It was the first year I was watching baseball. I followed the Giants all throughout the season from the start to the end. We didn't make the playoffs until the final day of the season when Jonathan Sanchez hit a triple. What's up with these pitcher triples? Sorry about that. But that was already awesome. I was riding a high. How lucky for me, my team snuck into the playoffs on the last day of the season. A very exciting feeling, and it was like the baseball gods wanted me to be a fan for life, because this is what happened in the 2010 postseason. The first game of the NLDS, Hall of Famer Roy Halladay threw a no-hitter, and at the exact same time in the other Game 1, Tim Lincecum threw a complete game of his own with 14 strikeouts against the Braves. So 2 unreal pitching performances to start the postseason. Then you had Brooks Conrad making a million errors to gift the Giants a ticket to the next round. Like literally, I think about this so much. What if he would have fielded those balls? Would we have won any of those games? Would we have made the playoffs in 2012, 2014? How much would be different if Brooks Conrad could field a ball? We'll never know. Then the other side of the bracket, you had the Texas Rangers, who, much like the Giants, were not the favorite to make the World Series. And the Rangers took on the Yankees, who had just won the 2009 World Series, and they vanquished them. And I love this series because, you know, the Yankee fans thought, oh, well, we'll win another World Series soon, right? Right? And here we are, 14 years later, we finally have a decade where the Yankees didn't win a World Series. And I want to thank the Rangers partially. And then in the NLCS, the team who was the runner-up in the 2009 World Series, the Phillies, were slain by the Giants. Roy Halladay looked untouchable all year long, won the Cy Young, but Cody Ross, who was pretty much given up on by the Marlins, hit 2 home runs off him to set the tone. Juan Uribe put the nail in the coffin, and the Giants and Rangers were on a collision course after beating the 2 behemoths in the World Series last year. Nobody predicted this World Series, just like nobody predicted the Giants finally winning a title in San Francisco. My first season watching baseball, and my team snuck into the playoffs, had some great moments, and won the whole thing. I love the 2010 postseason. At number 2, I have the 2016 postseason. This one had great moments all around, from start to finish, capped off by an amazing World Series. So in the wild card game, the first game of the postseason, we had the Blue Jays versus the Orioles. This was my first year of college. I remember watching this on my phone in class. I'm gonna leave it up to you to figure out whether I got my degree or not, but I just could not figure out why Zach Britton, who got Cy Young votes that year, the Orioles closer, was not taken out of the bullpen to pitch in a tied game. Like, never came out. And instead, Ubaldo Jimenez was put in. And let me tell you, I thought that guy was one of the greatest pitchers ever when I started watching in 2010, threw a no-hitter that year. But 6 years of being a baseball fan told me, Ubaldo Jimenez is one of the worst pitchers I've ever seen in my life. And I have no idea what he was doing in this spot. Edwin Encarnacion hit a walk-off home run. This game also featured fans throwing cans onto the field. I don't know what was happening this year, but it was crazy. The other wild card game was my Giants versus the Mets. I was still hopeful of this every even year thing. It was 2016. I'm like, yeah, we're gonna win another World Series. So what do I do in my other class? I place a bet. I place a few on who's going to be the first one to hit a home run. I say Joe Panic, Buster Posey, and I swear you don't have to believe me. True story though, put a bet on Connor Gillespie as well. It was $2 to win 80. I still remember because that's one of the only bets I've hit since. But yes, indeed, he hit a 9th inning home run to break the tie, and we won the game. Meanwhile, those same Blue Jays who just walked off the Orioles also upset the Rangers, who were one of the favorites coming out of the American League. They swept them. And sadly, this is the last series ever at Globe Life Park, an amazing stadium. It's just too hot for them to play there. I hate that fact because this stadium is amazing. And yes, the division series also saw my Giants finally kicked out of a playoff series while I was a fan. I didn't know it could happen. Matt Moore pitched his heart out in Game 4. I thought we were going to force a Game 5, but Derek Law sucks. I hate him. One of my least favorite Giants. I'm moving on. We have the Indians versus the Blue Jays, which at least I remember for Trevor Bauer being an idiot, like the clubhouse cancer he is, he cut his finger fixing a drone right before he tried to pitch. And the loser he is, he just was super selfish. He acted like he could pitch. He, instead of letting the Indians actually have a real pitcher start the game and not blow his team's chances, he tried to pitch through the injury. And of course, his stitches ripped open. He was bleeding all over the place. They had to take him out. But luckily for Bauer, the Indians moved on to the World Series, where they would face the Cubs. This one was awesome. Right off the bat, we knew whoever was going to win was going to break a historic drought. The Indians had not won since 1948, and the Cubs, even worse, not since 1908, a 108-year gap. And it just so happened that the Cubs ended the longest title drought in MLB history. They won the World Series. They were down 3-1. They won the final 3 games. And unlike the 2017 and the 2019 World Series, Game 7 was actually super entertaining until the very end. Back and forth, went extra innings. There was a 17-minute rain delay. I remember that was one of the most stressful moments. I wasn't even a fan of either team. Rajai Davis hit that crazy home run off Chapman, but the Cubs eventually came back and won the whole thing. It was so surreal, but it's so ingrained in my memory. this was a great one. Before I get to number 1, if you enjoyed this video and would like to see more, please subscribe. I said this in a previous video and you guys actually did it, and I really appreciate it. But without further ado, this is Sean, and this is my number 1 MLB postseason, and it is the 2011 postseason. This postseason features what I would still call the best World Series that I've ever seen, between the Cardinals and the Rangers. But before we got there were some great moments all around. Notably, the Diamondbacks and Brewers NLDS matchup that went to Game 5. This Game 5 was close all throughout, ended up going extra innings, and featured a walk-off base hit from Nyjer Morgan, Tony Plush, as he liked to refer to himself as. And this was just so fun. During that first year I started watching baseball, I began to form an affection towards the Washington Nationals as my second favorite team. All because of Nyjer Morgan. He would throw tantrums on the field, thinking a ball went off his glove over the fence when it actually was still on the field, causing him to allow an inside the park home run, or getting in a fight with the entire Marlins team, 20 versus 1. He made me love the Nationals. And seeing him get a walk-off moment like this to send his team to the next round the next year showed me just how unpredictable baseball is and how the most random people can come up clutch. And another thing I noticed when thinking about this series, I've always had a little bias against the Brewers. I felt like the star power is just not there. They're not an exciting team to root for in October when the Giants don't make it. And I think the reason is because they're not the 2011 Brewers. This team had Ryan Braun, Prince Fielder, Ricky Weeks, Corey Hart, Nyjer Morgan. They were just so fun to watch. And I think I've compared every team since to this one. They're not the 2011 Brewers, I'm sorry. Then in the ALCS, the Rangers were looking to avenge their loss from the 2010 World Series. They went 6 games against the Tigers and blew out Detroit to go back to the World Series. This series had 2 extra inning games. One of them was ended with a Nelson Cruz walk-off home run, and I hope Nelson enjoyed that home run, because what would happen in the next series would taint his career for the rest of his life. But before we get to that, the Brewers played the Cardinals in the National League Championship Series, and a guy who I had never heard of before on the Cardinals, David Freese, went crazy, and he won the MVP of the series. It was a big part in helping the Cardinals advance all the way to the World Series. And as David Freese became this hero, we started to learn a little more about him. He was raised right next to St. Louis. He grew up a fan of the Cardinals, and he was just living his dream out. It was his 3rd year in the league, and he was just starting to make a name for himself. So there we were, the Cardinals, who had Albert Pujols in the final year of his contract, Lance Berkman on the edge of retiring, and this guy David Freese who's going crazy all of a sudden. Versus the Rangers with Josh Hamilton, Nelson Cruz, Cliff Lee, Adrian Beltre. Here they are. Cardinals won Game 1. Rangers won Game 2. Cardinals won Game 3. Rangers won Game 4. Rangers win Game 5. They are 1 game away from winning the whole thing for the first time ever. The game is played. We're in the 9th inning. They are now 1 strike away from winning the entire thing. And there is the ALCS hero, Nelson Cruz, in right field. He was the MVP of the American League Championship Series. And at the plate, David Freese, who is the MVP of the National League Championship Series. And Nelson Cruz is ready to celebrate. He's creeping in towards the mound. He's thinking of his celebration, how that champagne's gonna taste. But then a ball is hit right towards him, and he's running backwards, but he can't run very fast. And Nelson Cruz changes the trajectory of his life, misses this ball. David Freese hits a triple, and the game is tied. We go to extra innings, and the Rangers come back. They're going to win the game. They're going to win the World Series. But there is David Freese again to hit a walk-off home run. We're going to Game 7, and Freese did it again in Game 7. Led his hometown Cardinals to win the World Series. And that ruined the Rangers for what would be the better part of 13 years. The Cardinals won the World Series in spectacular fashion. Albert Pujols would leave the team and wouldn't come back until 2022 to end his career. And that was my list. Please tell me what you thought down below in the comments, and I'll see you next time when I give you the top 5 worst MLB postseasons. Can't wait to see you there.